Alright, what is up, everybody? We are back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, I'm doing another tier list. This video I probably should have done a little while ago, but I decided, we're going to do it now. I'm going to be putting every NBA team's free agency into a tier list. Basically, finally being able to give all my thoughts about each team's free agency here in today's video, because free agency is basically dead at this point. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, turn on notifications, do all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really upset a lot. Join the membership. If you want to learn more about the membership, there's a video on my channel explaining all of it. You can go back and watch that. Link to my Twitter, TikTok, stuff like that in the description down below. And yeah, don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So here we go. We're in the tier list maker. We got every team in the league in here, right? 3, 6, 9, 9 times 8, 27. Yep, 30 teams. And yeah, we're going to be tier listing every team. This is based on their free agency, not their team in general. This is just based off what their free agency was this season, all right? And I have on my phone some notes here, just because a lot of these things I kind of didn't remember because it happened like a month ago, but we're going to get into it. Starting with the Philadelphia 76ers, the first team we're starting with. And I think they're going to S tier. I think they have to be. They have to be one of the biggest winners. Some people probably think they won free agency, and I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, getting a guy like Paul George in the door, or he's getting a star player, is big, especially with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. And then filling out their roster with good role players. You know, they brought in Eric Gordon, who's a solid bench player. They brought in Andre Drummond as a backup big, who has been one of the better backup bigs the last couple of years. Bringing in a guy like Reggie Jackson. They brought back Kelly Oubre. Brought in Caleb Martin on a steal of a deal. What was it, 4 years, $32 million? That's a steal for Caleb Martin. Re-signing Tyrese Maxey. I just feel like they did everything that you would want as a fan of a team, your GM, to do in this situation for agency. Like Daryl Morey and the Sixers went out. They did what they needed to do. They brought in a star. They brought in good role players. Basically doing everything they can to load up this team to make a run at a finals appearance and a championship, because that's ultimately the end goal for the 76ers. And Daryl Morey did everything in his power too. Now it's just about the team in general for delivering it to them. Next, I have the Washington Wizards. They're an interesting one. They didn't really make a whole lot of moves. They signed Jonas Valanciunas and Sadiq Bey with their two guys. Both those guys on pretty good contracts. And apparently a report came out earlier, I think yesterday or today, saying that the Wizards are probably going to trade Valanciunas when they get an opportunity to this season, which makes sense. They traded Denny Avdia, which I didn't like that move. I've been vocal. I don't really like that move. They re-signed Rashawn Holmes. They still have Malcolm Brogdon. They haven't traded Kyle Kuzma. They probably go into between a B and a C just because their two signings were solid signings, especially for the value. But overall, they didn't really do. I'm gonna give them a C. They were just kind of there, you know. Again, Valanciunas and CDB I think were good signings, but ultimately they still have some questionable things like trading Danny Avdia, still having Kyle Kuzma on the team, like just some odd moves that they still haven't made or have made that are just confusing. So the Wizards, I'll put them in C. The Atlanta Hawks next. The Hawks, their big move, they traded away DeJounte Murray. They brought back Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance Jr. Looking at some of the other things that they did. Not really a whole lot much. Yeah, they didn't really make a big free agency signing or anything like that. Their big move was trading away DeJounte Murray and getting back Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance, who are two very solid role players. Dyson Daniels could be a breakout candidate this year. After that, not really much to do. The Clint Capella, is he still on the team? I guess he'll be on the team still, even though there's been a lot of talk about trading him. Um, DeAndre Hunter's still on the team. I don't really know. I'll put them also in kind of the C tier. I think getting rid of DeJounte Murray was a good move that I like, but they just didn't really do much else besides that, so I'm going to give them a C. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I don't think have made a free agency signing. One of the few teams that have, I don't think I've signed anybody in free agency. The only thing they've done is give extensions. They gave Donovan Mitchell an extension, gave Evan Mobley an extension, gave Jared Allen an extension. So they're kind of really banking on this core four to really be the team with the new head coach, Kenny Atkinson. Not making any signings is not a great move at all, but they did complete their plan to re-sign Donovan Mitchell, and for now it looks like he will be on the team for the next couple of years, so now they can move forward with themselves. Apparently, I read a report today that said a lot of teams are interested in Jared Allen, so maybe they gave Jared Allen the extension to flip him. It'll be easier to flip him because he was going on the last year of his contract. Evan Mobley giving him that money makes sense. He's their young guy that's been really good, and they're banking on him taking a big jump eventually, maybe next season. So I don't want to put everybody in the C tier, but they just had another kind of just they had like a meh. I mean, they did make their signings. They did make their free agency re-signings, but again, not really having any changes. Still, I don't like that a lot. So I'll put that in the C tier. The Detroit Pistons are next. Pistons had a lot of money to spend, and they did spend it. They gave Tobias Harris a 2-year, $52 million contract. They brought in Malik Beasley on kind of a dang near minimum for $6 million a year. They brought in Paul Reed, which I like. They traded for Tim Hardaway Jr., I guess. I'm gonna put them in. I mean, they did. They had money to spend. They had to spend that money, and so getting a guy Tobias Harris, was it overpay? Absolutely, but in their situation, it kind of was just the thing that to do. Getting Malik Beasley, a team that desperately needs some spacing around Cade Cunningham, bringing in Malik Beasley, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. A guy like Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a veteran that could come in and have some moments where maybe he can give you 5 or 6 threes in a game sometimes. Paul Reed, I really like that addition on the waiver wire as a backup big man. So I'll put them in B. I'll put them in the B tier. Even though, do I think this team is significantly better now? No, but the moves that they did make were not bad moves at all. They were moves that the team needed. So that's why I put them in B tier. The Indiana Pacers. Indiana Pacers, this free agency. Another team that kind of stood back. They gave Pascal Siakam an extension. They re-signed Obi Toppin. They gave Andrew Nembhard an extension. The only thing they really didn't do was they brought in James Wiseman. I guess that was their only really thing they did. But I'll put them in B tier just because they were a team that they did what they had to do. You know, re-signing Pascal was a big, great move. Getting Andrew Nembhard on that, nice for contract, especially if he could have a breakout next year, is nice. Obi Toppin was solid last year, so giving him that extension wasn't really bad at all. And this team was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and they have a lot of talent, so I'll put them in the B tier. They did solid. The Milwaukee Bucks are next. The Bucks, after a disappointing year last year, they came in this free agency not really with a lot to spend, and honestly, they made some good moves. They brought in Taurean Prince, who's a solid wing. Gary Trent Jr., I think, has a chance to have a big year next year, kind of getting in that spot, replacing Malik Beasley. DeLon Wright is a really solid backup point guard as well. They didn't make any big moves, so I will put them in. I put them in A tier. Honestly, I put them in. I like their free agency. I do. DeLon Wright, Gary Trent, Taurean Prince are very solid pickups for a team that like the Bucks that needed some shooting, needed some defense, and those guys can defend. So I think that's a nice move for the Bucks. So I'm gonna put them in the A tier. The Toronto Raptors. Their big news of free agency was giving out extensions. They gave Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly both some pretty nice extensions, and besides that, didn't really do much else. I guess they brought in Davion Mitchell, and they brought in Davion Mitchell. Bruce Brown is still on this team. I'll put them in. I'll put them in C tier. I mean, there wasn't really many moves to make. You got to consider the context that the Raptors are in a point now where they're kind of trying to build around Scotty Barnes, so they're not gonna come out here and spend a lot of money and get another star. You know, so it wasn't like they had a bunch of things to do in free agency. But I'm gonna put them in. I'll put them in C tier, I guess, just because they didn't really make a whole lot of moves. They still are kind of in a really weird state. They did give Scotty an extension. A lot of people have been not talking very highly of the Emmanuel Quickly extension, saying it's a lot of money, which it is a lot of money. But that's banking on. I mean, he's still 24 years old and had a really good season when he got to Toronto. So they're banking on him and Scotty kind of being the 1-2 punch in Toronto. They still haven't traded Bruce Brown. Just an interesting team, I guess. I'll put them in C, I guess. The Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks are a team. I'm putting them in A. I think I like their offseason. I mean, they were in the NBA Finals last year and got better. You know, they traded for Quentin Grimes to replace Tim Hardaway Jr., who Quentin Grimes is still very young. Even though he had a pretty bad year last year, still is a guy that can knock down the three and defend. They brought in Najee Marshall. Even though Derrick Jones Jr. was one of their bright spots last year, they brought in a guy, Najee Marshall, that could be a Swiss Army knife and I think really fits teams like the Mavericks. Bringing in Klay Thompson on a pretty nice deal. A guy that is going to live spacing the floor next to Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, being still one of the better three-point shooters. Spencer Dinwiddie on a minimum. just to come in and give him a couple, nice minutes. Like I think that's an amazing offseason. I mean, when you're in an NBA, you're a team that just made the NBA Finals and get better the next year. That's everything you want for your GMs to do. So that's why the Dallas Mavericks, they're gonna go in A tier for me. The Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets have been really tough this free agency. Losing out KCP was a big blow. They did bring in Russell Westbrook, which, if you've seen my videos, I'm a big fan of the move of Russell Westbrook to Denver. They also brought in Dario Saric as a solid backup big, but that's really it. They're really banking on just their young guys like Christian Brown and Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson taking big steps forward next year and helping out the core four of Jokic, Murray, Porter, and Gordon, which is another story that Jamal Murray doesn't have an extension yet. So that could be some controversy there too. Ultimately, I don't want to put them in D because again, I like the Russell Westbrook signing, but at the end of the day, this is a team that wants to win a championship, and losing out on KCP and not really having. Also, you got to look at the context. They don't really have a whole lot of avenues as well to replace that KCP. Unless they do make a big trade for Michael Porter Jr., which I don't think you have to really do yet. So I don't want to put them in D for that, but I kind of do want to have to put them in D just because their team has got worse. When you get worse in free agency, it's not a good look, And so losing KCP in general, I think that probably goes in D, I guess. The Memphis Grizzlies. Looking at the free agency, they didn't really make a whole lot of moves in free agency. I think their only really move they made was trading Zaire Williams and bringing Luke Kennard back. That's really all they did. I mean, this team next year is going to look totally different just because, their entire their team was hurt last year, and now they're back, I guess. So they didn't really have to make many moves. They still don't really have another big man, which I guess we'll question. It looks like Zach Edey's going to play big man minutes, but they do have Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama's been doing really good. So, do I put him in D? They didn't really do anything in free agency, so I guess I'll put him in D, maybe. Yeah, I'll put them in D. The Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves had a great year last year. They came in and looking at their range, they brought in PJ Dozier, brought in Joe Ingles, who's a really solid, veteran wing that can help out there. Most of their work was done in the draft, bringing in Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. The draft is not counting in this free agency. It's just simply bringing in Joe Ingles and PJ Dozier were really their free agency moves, which isn't anything really crazy, But they still have a good team all around. They traded Kyle Anderson, signed and traded Kyle Anderson, but also didn't really lose. Kyle Anderson was really the only guy they lost. Jordan McLaughlin, I guess, was their backup point guard, but he didn't really play consistently in the playoffs. They still have Nasir Eid, still have Nickeil Alexander Walker. Joe Ingles can kind of do some of the things Kyle Anderson did, I guess. So I guess I'll put them in. I'll put them in C tier as well, I guess, just because they didn't really do a whole lot of things, but they didn't really need to. The San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio Spurs, for me, go in S tier. I love the San Antonio Spurs this offseason. Bringing Chris Paul, a position and something that you really, really, really needed. Obviously, even though he is older, getting him on a one-year deal to help out with Wemby and being kind of putting Chris Paul in a situation that Chris Paul's comfortable in, being a guy that can set the culture over there. I think is big, and also bringing in Harrison Barnes and DeMar DeRozan signing trade. They got it and walked away with Harrison Barnes, who I think is a Spurs type player. Again, he's a guy that can help set culture. He's a guy that's a veteran. He's not gonna really step on anybody's toes. He's gonna come in and help a lot of these young guys like Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson and Jeremy Sohan, giving them advice on and off the court. And I think he just fits in as a Spur. You know what I mean? So I think that those two moves were amazing moves that I really love for the Spurs. I think they're gonna really help set the future of San Antonio. So that's why I'm gonna put them in S tier. I think they're one of the biggest winners of this free agency. The Utah Jazz. The Jazz are another team that didn't really do anything in free agency. Like most of their work was done at the NBA draft. They didn't. I don't think they haven't really signed anybody. They signed Drew Eubanks, I guess, as a backup big man, but that's really all they kind of need to do. They didn't really need to do much else. So I guess I'm also gonna put them in the C tier, just because they didn't really do anything in this free agency. And honestly, looking at some stuff now, I maybe kind of want. No. I'm gonna keep the Cavs at the C tier. I'm gonna keep Cavs in C tier. The LA Clippers. The LA Clippers. Lost on Paul George, obviously. They gave James Harden a lot of money. Their signings, they brought in Mo Bamba, they brought Nick Batum back, signed and traded for Chris Dunn, brought Kevin Porter Jr. in, I guess. Derrick Jones Jr. on a pretty nice contract. Um, Honestly, I mean, losing on Paul George and giving James Harden all that money makes them a definite not S or A. I kind of do want to put them in B because I kind of do. I mean, I don't mind the signings that they did get. I mean, Mo Bamba, they got him on a 1 year, basically minimum. Chris Dunn, getting him at the point guard gets a solid. Nick Batum is a guy that he wants to be in LA with the Clippers, so I guess that's good. Getting a guy like Derrick Jones Jr., who had a career year last year on only $10 million per year, is nice. Kevin Porter Jr., I guess, is there. They still haven't traded PJ Tucker or Bowen's Highland yet. I don't want to put everybody in C, but like they kind of just had like a. I mean, at least they did things. They actually made moves, which they kind of had to. But I'm still gonna put them in C just because I mean they didn't really do anything, and like they just didn't really do much. And looking at this now, I kind of want to put like I want to take one of these teams and put them away because I don't want everybody to be in C tier. I kind of want to change up some of the things a little bit. So I might put the Jazz down to D tier just because they didn't really do anything worth noting. And when you do that, it's just I guess put them in D tier. But the Clippers, I'll put in C. The Phoenix Suns. The Suns actually, I think have had a pretty solid free agency. Getting Tyus Jones on that steal of a contract. Bringing in Monte Morris, one of the better backup point guards as well. They brought back Noyce O'Neal. Mason Plumlee as a backup big man, I think is really, really nice. So, I mean, they have done some pretty nice things. So I'm going to put them, honestly, in the A tier. I think those moves that they made are really nice. Tyus Jones, one of the better, more efficient point guards in the league, which was one of your biggest weaknesses last season. Monte Morris, another guy that's just going to be a very efficient point guard off the bench. And then Mason Plumlee, a good backup big that he could play a little bit in the playoffs. So, I mean, they didn't really have enough wiggle room really to make things happen, but what the contracts and money that they did have, those are really, really good signings. So I have to put them high in the A tier. The Portland Trail Blazers. Looking at their free agency, they traded for Danny Avdija, which I really, really like. Um, After that, I mean, they haven't traded Jeremy Grant yet. Anthony Simons is still on the team. Um, I'm putting them in the C tier again because I just feel like it's kind of similar to the Washington Wizards in a sense where they brought in Danny Avdija, which I really like, but then also they haven't traded Jeremy Grant yet, which it seems like the writing's on the wall. He's going to get traded, even as I'm talking about maybe Anthony Simons being on the move. So I guess I'm going to put him in, the C tier. The Sacramento Kings. Of course, their big move, making the move to get DeMar DeRozan, which is a very interesting move. Also in free agency, Jalen McDaniels, getting him in a trade is solid. I think he could be decent. Jordan McLaughlin's a solid backup point guard. Re-signing Malik Monk on that steal of a contract is pretty nice as well. So I'm going to put them in the B tier. I think they did solid. Are these going to be the perfect moves? Only time will tell. DeMar DeRozan was kind of a big gamble, which I understand because I feel like they had to kind of take that gamble. But then, yeah, getting Malik Monk, one of the best six men in the league on that contract, Jalen McDaniels and is it Jalen? Yeah, Jalen McDaniels and Jordan McLaughlin are two really solid role players. They don't really have to play a lot, but if they do play good, then good. So I'm put them in the B tier. The New York Knicks. They made the trade for Mikal Bridges, which obviously is big. Re-signing OG, Jalen Brunson coming back on that steal of a contract. Cameron Payne and Precious Achiuwa are really solid. I'm gonna put them in. I kind of didn't want to put them in S tier, but I'm gonna put them in the A tier. I'm gonna put them in the A tier. I think they had a really good free agency. Getting Mikal Bridges, who's just someone that comes in and fits right into that system, is really good. Re-signing your star player Jalen Brunson on that steal of a deal. The OG contract is a big contract, but it makes sense. And then getting Cameron Payne and Precious Achiuwa, two guys that I think are really solid off your bench. That's a really good offseason. That is a really good offseason for the Knicks. The only thing they don't really have is big man play, but they still have time maybe to get that worked out. So the Knicks, I'm gonna put them in the A tier. The New Orleans Pelicans. This is gonna be an interesting team to put in this tier list. They did make the trade for DeJounte Murray and didn't really give up a whole lot. So getting a guy like DeJounte is really nice. But after that, Daniel Tice signing him. He's a solid backup center. Trey Jameson, they picked up on the waiver wire, I think, is decent. But after that, they still have Brandon Ingram on this team, who is someone that I think should have been traded months ago. Again, their big man. I mean, getting Daniel Tice is cool, but their big man depth is kind of weird. They just have a lot going on with this Pelican team, you know. And honestly, even though getting DeJounte is an amazing move, not being able to find a home for Brandon Ingram and having him still on this team is a big kind of disappointment. Which is why I kind of want to put them in the C tier, because those two moves I feel like kind of cancel themselves out. And again, still having no big man depth really at all. They did bring in Daniel Tice, but I don't know. I kind of want to put them in C, just because I think like the DeJounte Murray and Brandon Ingram move kind of cancel themselves out. I feel like yet, again, Brandon Ingram still could be traded, which if they do that, then they'll go higher. But right now, they kind of just are meh to me in free agency. The Charlotte Hornets, look at their free agency, made the trade. They brought in Josh Green in a trade. They brought Seth Curry back. They brought in Taj Gibson. Doing solid things. They didn't really have a lot of money to make moves. They brought back Miles Bridges, and Miles Bridges was their big re-signing, which is something, I guess. I would put them kind of in the... I'll put them in B tier, honestly. I think that's a solid free agency. Bringing in Josh Green, I think, could be a guy that could break out next year. Seth Curry, you need some shooting on your team, and Seth Curry is a hometown kid, so he's just going to stay there. Taj Gibson is a solid, guy that can help set culture in a team that desperately kind of needs that culture. And, I mean, you did kind of pay a lot for Miles Bridges, but you're the only team that kind of wants Miles Bridges on your team right now. And he's a 20-point per game scorer, so I guess that's solid. So I'll put them in B, I guess. The Houston Rockets. Rockets didn't really... They traded for A.J. Griffin. They brought back Aaron Holiday. That's pretty much it. They didn't really need to do a whole lot of things. Their move comes with Steven Adams coming in, who they traded for last year. So I'll put them in C, just because they didn't really need to do anything. Well, I'll put them in D, actually, just because, A.J. Griffin's solid, Aaron Holiday, but realistically, those guys probably aren't going to really be regular rotational players. So I'll put them in D just because they didn't really do much, The Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, free agency, brought back Thomas Bryant. They brought in Alec Burks, who's a solid role player. Brought back Haywood Highsmith. That's pretty much it. And they go into D because they're a team that just is in a weird spot. They can't, again, haven't made a big move to really ignite this team. Just kind of being like stagnant and not really doing much. You know what I mean? And that's not really what the Heat usually do. So they're going to go into D tier. The Bulls, for free agency, they traded for Josh Giddey. They made that trade to get Josh Giddey. They brought in Chris Duarte and the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade. Jalen Smith, I really like that signing. But after that, I guess they're going C. Josh Giddey could be a guy that comes up and does good next year. I think Jalen Smith is a really good signing. He could be a breakout guy next year. Their trades, they traded DeMar DeRozan and got back Chris Duarte. And they traded Alex Caruso and got back Josh Giddey. And they still have not found a trade for Zach LaVine, which looks like it's inevitable that he's going to stay a Chicago Bull. So I guess I'll put that in C just because I think the things Josh Giddey and Jalen Smith are nice, but after that, not really much. The Brooklyn Nets, they made the trade. They traded Mikal Bridges away. They brought in Bojan Bogdanovic. They signed Keon Johnson. They brought in Shake Milton in that trade as well. They traded for Zaire Williams. I kind of want to put them high just because they finally have chosen a direction, which is we're going to be bad and we're going to rebuild. They finally made the decision to do that, which makes me kind of want to put them a little bit higher just because they made that decision and finally did it. They still have not traded guys like Cameron Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith yet. I assume Ben Simmons is going to be on the team for the rest of the year. They re-signed Nick Claxton. So honestly, I kind of want to put them B just because I like that they kind of finally made the decision of let's trade Mikal Bridges and let's be bad next year and tank. So I like that move a lot. So I'll put them high. The Thunder, they're another team, immediate S tier, one of the winners of free agency. Trading for Alex Caruso, one of the better role players in the league. Bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein. Did they pay a lot for him? Yes, but they needed him and they had the money to spend. Bringing back Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, two guys that are going to be key rotational players next year on pretty nice contracts. Just did everything right. Did everything that they needed to do. So they have to go in S tier just because, I mean, yeah. The Golden State Warriors, they lost Klay Thompson. They're apparently not going to trade for Larry Marketing. And their free agency, they brought in Kyle Anderson, brought in Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton, um, Lindy Waters. Those are solid players that I think can help. At the end of the day, with the Golden State Warriors, losing out on Klay Thompson the way you did, not budging to go get Larry Markkinen really. Also, they kind of just go in a C tier. I don't think they did D tier because they at least have made some moves. I've been trying, but it's just kind of like they're not really taking the step forward. So I'll put them in C tier. The Boston Celtics. The Celtics didn't really have to make any moves. All they did was bring back their team that won the championship last year. They gave Jason Tatum the biggest contract in NBA history. They re-signed Derek White. They brought back their bench. So I put them in B tier because they're bringing back a championship team and got their guys paid. So what more can you really say to that? The LA Lakers, they go in automatic D tier. They have not done anything. The only thing they've done is bring back players on player options. That's really all they did. They have not made any moves. They kind of just have stood packed. Oh, they gave Max Christie an extension. But after that, just haven't really made anything happen. So they go in a D. And then the Orlando Magic. I think they're a team that they go in an A tier as well. KCP is a perfect move for them. Bringing in KCP, that's a perfect player for them. Guy's going to bring 3-point shooting, defense, one of the better role players in the league. They also paid Franz Wagner. They brought back Oka Badase. They gave Jonathan Isaac a nice contract. They brought in Corey Joseph as a backup point guard. Brought back Gary Harris. Just they again doing just the right things. You know, KCP was the perfect move. They're keeping their team together. That were one win away from making it to the second round next year. I think that's really solid. But yeah, here is the final tier list of my free agency moves. So we got Sixers, Spurs, Thunder in the S tier. The Bucks, Mavs, Suns, Knicks, Magic in the A tier. The Pistons, the Pacers, the Kings, the Hornets, the Nets, the Celtics in B tier. The Wizards, Hawks, Cavs, Raptors, Timberwolves, Clippers, Blazers, Pelicans, Bulls, Warriors in C tier. And then the Nuggets, Grizzlies, Jazz, Rockets, Heat, Lakers into D tier. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. These are my personal opinions, so if you disagree, that's fine. Let me know down in the comments what you think. You know, if one of these teams that I put high shouldn't be as high, or the team that I put really low should have been higher. Let me know your thoughts on some of these teams for agencies. But yeah, it's going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn on notifications, do all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.